Okay, thanks everyone for being here today. This is the Users Committee meeting. What's going to happen is I'm going to give a brief introduction to what the Users Committee is because it's still pretty new. And then we have, I don't know, maybe a little less than half of the Users Committee here in person, and the other half are joining us online. And they are going to go through one of their meetings. So they're going to discuss various aspects of the Rubin Science platform and data products, and just sort of discuss how they're working for our users community. And then at the end, there might be a bit of a closed session if the users committee wants one, when we will leave them to it. But we'll kind of decide that around the hour mark, see how things are going. Yep. And Greg, did you put your hand up briefly? No? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yep. Okay. Thanks for checking that. Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, that's what we're doing today. Right. So introduction to the users committee. So the Rubin Users Committee is charged with soliciting feedback from the science community. That's what we call like LSST users. And they're charged with soliciting that feedback about the LSSD data products and the Rubin Science platform in particular, and then recommending improvements in their twice yearly reports, which go to the Rubin Operations Director and also to me, the lead community scientist for Rubin Observatory. Their full charge can be found in rdo051.lsst.io. It's a formal charge document, but there's also a website at lsst.org/scientists/users committee where you can find out a little bit more about their charge and a list of all the users committee members. And there's also a calendar of their meetings right there on that webpage also, and links to their minutes and their reports. Yes, and you can also find all of the reports in the community forum. We use the tag users-committee, so that's also an easy way to search for and find all what the users committee is up to. And then down at the bottom of the screen here, I have the list of the 12 users committee members with little asterisks next to their names for those that were here attending in person and mingling with the users, with our LSST users this whole time. The users committee, part of that soliciting feedback is being available to be contacted either as individuals or as a group. So for that, we use either the Rubin Community Forum, where you can send a direct message to an individual users committee member, or you can message the entire group all at once using the @users-committee group name, or you can send an email to the list at rubinobs-users-committee@list.lsst.org. And that will email all of the users committee at once. So they are available and willing to be contacted by members of the users community. And now I just wanted to do a roundtable and have all of the users committee members introduce themselves. I'll start in the room and then we'll go through the blue jeans and have people introduce themselves. So your name, where you're from, and like a really brief science field area. Okay, let's start. We'll start with Matt. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Matt Holman. I'm at the Center for Astrophysics. I am the current chair of the user committee. My research is in primarily solar system dynamics and searches for bodies in our solar system.
Yes, yeah, I got it. Okay, so I am Dominique Boutigny. I'm from France. I am 2P3. I am in charge of Rubin computing. I'm scientific coordinator exactly at Rubin computing in France. That we are trying to deploy the infrastructure at IN2P3 Computing Center in Lyon. I'm also part of the dark energy science collaboration and working in the cluster group.
Well, I'm Alejandra Muñoz Arancibia. I'm a postdoc in Chile at the Millennium Institute of Astrophysics and also based in the Center for Mathematical Modeling in Universidad de Chile. I'm part of the Alerce community broker. Now I'm working in mostly transients and variables in general, doing some data analysis, but my background using LSST things is back from the PhD working on cosmological simulations of galaxies.
Hi, I'm Matt Wiesner. I'm at faculty at Benedictine University near Chicago. I've been involved most with DESC, working with DC2, and also with the Strong Lensing Science Collaboration.
Hi everyone, I'm Igor Andreoni. I am an Ilgeras Fellow at University of Maryland and NASA Goddard. I am part of the Transient and Variable Star Collaboration. I like searching for transients, and in particular, I like the science of electromagnetic counterparts to gravitational waves.
I'm Michael Woodvasey, professor at the University of Pittsburgh. My science interests are supernova cosmology. I'm a member of DESC, and I'm the PI of the Pitt Google Alert Broker.
Okay, now we'll turn to our Blue Jeans Users Committee members. Alessandra Corsi, can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Alessandra Corsi. I'm faculty at Texas Tech University. I work on relativistic transients like corporal up supernova, gamma ray burst, and gravitational waves, as well as gravitational wave data analysis.
Ashley.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Villar. I'm an assistant professor at Penn State University. I primarily think about core collapse supernovae and electromagnetic counterparts to gravitational wave sources. I do so largely from a machine learning type of perspective, and I'm primarily associated with the Transients and Variable Stars scientific collaboration.
Javier Sanchez.
Hi, I'm Javier Sanchez. I'm an associate scientist at Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore. My main interest is in galaxy clustering and weak lensing, and I'm part of the LSST Dark Energy Science Collaboration.
And do we have Qingling with us today?
Yes. So I'm Qingling. I'm a postdoc at the University of Edinburgh, UK, and I mainly work on AGNs, black holes, galaxy, and how they co-evolve together over cosmic history. And I'm associated with the AGN-SC.
Did I miss any users committee members who are with us? No, he can't join us today. Okay. Wonderful. Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. I think we got everybody. And now, I turn it over to Matt and you'll lead the discussion. Yeah.
So I guess first off, I want to thank Melissa and the whole CET for really facilitating the users group. It's been great. I also want to thank the people who put together all of the notebooks. I think that's really been fantastic and been a way for so many of us to get involved with the data. So the users committee had a kickoff meeting, and we have had one formal meeting. We'll as the slide said, we have 2 meetings a year. There'll be another one probably in October, since this is not, this is qualifying as our one in-person meeting this year. So this is still kind of a work in progress. This is really our first kind of public event as a users group. So you'll get to see us as we learn. So before we get started on discussing some of the notebooks and other services, I thought maybe I would see if there are any questions in the audience or online.
Thanks, Matt. This is Bob Blum. I was wondering if you could just maybe say a few words, because not everyone will know that a little bit about what we charged you to do and how to work with the platform and connect with the user experience.
Yeah, so that you're asking about the charge for this specific meeting, or the charge of the users?
The users committee generally.
Yeah, the users committee is really charged with soliciting feedback from the users, and that's sort of a broad definition of users, anybody who's interacting with the data. But also we're charged with getting involved with the data ourselves, and that part of that is the educational process, and then we report. All of our reports go to to you.
Yeah.
So that's a way for us to have formal findings that can help, I guess, prioritize some of the needs of the users.
Absolutely.
So specifically, we are, to kind of reiterate, to get involved in the data so that we see some of the issues ourselves, but also make sure that at meetings such as this, we're available to the rest of the user community so that they can ask questions, but also use us as a way of channeling their feedback to the higher level processes within LSST.
Yeah, that's great. And so for others who maybe have not connected deeply with the science platform and how we're going forward, you could think of this committee is in the analogy to other users committees that we've had based on more traditional telescopes, where we try and get people on the users committee who are familiar with those facilities, know how to use them, have a sense of what the user experience should be and could be, and then they can interact more directly and connect directly with the users community. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do here. This users committee will be using the science platform and will be experts in it, and so they'll be able to talk to the community on that level, and then feedback to RUN leadership what the highest priority needs from the user's perspective.
Don, you had a question.
Yes, I have a question about the scope of this users committee. So up to now, we are speaking a lot about the RSP, access to the data, and so on, which is very nice and very important, of course. I would like to know if the Rubin Users Committee is also in charge of getting the users' input for programs like commissioning or future surveys or these kind of things.
Not really. That's sort of beyond scope. For the users committee, commissioning and survey strategy sort of have their own programs to interact with the community. So we focus mostly on data products and Rubin Science Platform. But like that said, if there's pressing needs, don't keep them to yourself too. So it is still a channel to raise issues, but it's not. We won't have anything planned to study the commissioning activities exactly, but you will be more focused on making sure data preview 1 is really useful for the community. So it's kind of related to commissioning, but more from the data products and science platform perspective. Is that kind of, I don't know if Bob wants to chime in on that answer.
I think you have it just right. The connection back to things like commissioning, which after all is a very project-focused internal activity, will be to the data products that come out through DP1, and that will be a good first opportunity to really connect with the community, because they'll see some real data.
Do we have any other questions online?
No questions online at the moment.
Okay. So.
Oh, hold up. Oh, it was a question about the connection between community engagement team and users committee. And the connection there is the community engagement team is the Rubin side that facilitates all of the users committee's activities. So we organize the meetings, make sure you have a place to put your minutes, make the agendas for you, and then also the community engagement team, user acceptance testing of the Rubin Science platform is going to become part of the CET's duties. And then we will be working with the users committee to do more formal user acceptance testing on the RSP, also working with the RSP developers on that as well. So those are the main ways that we interact. That was a Blue Jeans question.
Okay.
Let me just check the Slack real quick.
The question here, yeah.
Yeah, so down the line when the data is public and the general public wants to interact with the data, will we be interacting with them also in connecting them with the data?
That's a really good question.
Sorry, the question was about
more of the public. If citizens are interested and want to do something with the data, but they're not professional scientists, does that fall under outreach or does that fall under UC?
that would fall under outreach. Yeah, if they are not a data rights holder, then they would be using the subsets of the data that have been prepared for public outreach to do their investigations. In some cases, when there is a member of the public, like a very advanced amateur astronomer, if they want to, I think in the data rights policy, there is a way for them to apply for data rights as a separate channel. Bob has left the table, but he's nodding. Are you nodding? Was that a coincidental head nod or? That's okay.
What's the question?
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to talk to Will. It's a bad thing to talk to Will during the meeting.
Yeah. The question was about, it's basically a who are the users question. It's all data rights holders are the users. And the Rubin data policy, I think it has in there somewhere, if you're a very advanced amateur astronomer, you would like to have data rights to do more science than you can with the public data sets.
Yeah.
You can apply for data rights.
I think that's a concept that we have discussed, but we certainly haven't fleshed it out. And another route might be to get such people involved in a real citizen science program.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so
there certainly is. It's not crazy to think about in the future the way amateur astronomy has just exploded and it's really doing real science, that there could be people could start to think of some of them as users of Rubin. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. But we don't have a specific concept yet.
Just a quick follow-up for that. So my understanding was everyone in the US and Chile has automatic data rights. So you don't, but that doesn't mean you automatically have access to the data?
Well, what we would really like to say, and we sometimes confuse access and rights. So what we have said is professional scientists in the US have access, will have the right to access the data and then access to work with it and publish it. All Chilean astronomers and astrophysicists will have the right to access the data. Whether or not there's probably going to be some computer data scientists that are straddling the border between astrophysics and data science that I'm sure will get them in. But we have not said all people in those places can get access to the data. We just don't have the scale to guarantee that. So it's really the data access centers are built to handle the professional scientist community, including the folks at international institutions who have these will have these data rights agreements and are making in-kind contributions, and they will be treated exactly like U.S. and Chilean scientists. They'll have the same access rights, the same ability to publish, and then of course everyone has to follow the data rights policy and how they interact with people that don't have data rights.
So, Melissa, you had your hand up, but Mario had his hand up before. Do you have something that's directly connected to this?
Yeah, it's just I think like the Rubin data policy says like employed at an institution or an enrolled student at an institution in astronomy. So that's like the cutoff in that data policy.
Mario?
So I mean, related to that, I think you answered a lot of my question. But how is a professional astronomer defined? And it sounds like it truly is astronomer. So if there's a computer scientist there, that they wouldn't be included in this group. And the reason why I ask is, there are a number of private institutes that do research. I don't know if those are included in the definition. There are also a number of smaller private observatories that do excellent research. And I think those folks feel like they have the right to access the data by being taxpayers. And I do understand our constraints, but it might be good to understand those definitions better and communicate that they will have some extra effort to make to actually get to the data.
I think it's probably isn't as clear as it should be, and so we should take a look at the data policy and make it clear. I think the intent is certainly in the United States to make it as broadly applicable to anyone that could do what we would recognize as research, even if they're at some of these other types of institutions. That's maybe, and so in the international case, we're dealing with folks that are just naturally connected to the program through astronomy and astrophysics. And then in Chile, there's probably a little bit of a gray line where we have said from the beginning it would be all astronomers in Chile, but I'm sure that there will be cases where we'll want to expand that a little bit to data scientists and other things. No, I think you have to think of this in terms of, so in the international community, it's individuals that we're dealing with and institutions that we're dealing with. So that's kind of self-defining, right? In the U.S., I think it's more about the person and whether they're doing what we would recognize as real research, like that they would be publishing in journals and things like that. And maybe this won't be an issue, and maybe it will. Like if we ended up with a definition that allowed any amateur astronomer with a backyard telescope to access the data access center, that might be a problem. But if there were professional, certainly if there are PhD astronomers who happen to be at a commercial institution, they would be allowed to join, right? Phil wants to jump in.
Just real quick on, I think we have an early case of this in the desk. So we have a grad student that graduated, went into industry, but has kept their Slack user status and wants to keep in touch with the research group and contribute to papers. So this is kind of a high-end citizen scientist is how we're thinking of her. And so we're working through, the data rights for them. We think that it's all consistent with the data policy to keep her in the data rights holder list.
We have a question from Michael.
Sorry, Michael Strauss here, just with the question. As I understand it, the only reason we're going through this is a question of resources. That is, if we had arbitrary resources, we would not be worrying about this and basically say anyone can have access.
I think that's mostly true, but one could imagine that, I at least think it's going to be easier to manage the proprietary nature of the data through our professional community who kind of understand all that. If we had somehow opened it up to channels where there's lots of people not involved directly in our community or communities, then the risk or the overhead of trying to manage the proprietary nature of the data would probably be much greater. But apart from that, what you say is certainly a big part of it.
Is there any more follow-up on that? Yeah, Will.
Hi, thank you. Will Clarkson. I think I heard the comment from Bob that individuals that publish astronomy would qualify for data rights. Just to raise one concern though, like individuals that may be astronomers that may not have much opportunity to work on research during the year. They may be at community colleges, might have a very heavy teaching load. Is there some assurance that professional astronomers that do not regularly publish would be eligible? Is the definition broad enough to include maybe the only astronomer at a community college.
I think anyone who's teaching astronomy at a community college and wants access can get it. That I think is they're part of the community.
I think it would be useful to have all of this written down, and I understand it probably is written down in a document because we do tend to get these kinds of questions, and I just want to make sure I don't inadvertently say something wrong to the community. Especially in some parts of the community, there are a number of folks who are either in small institutions or community colleges or in companies that are doing very interesting astronomy on the side, including publishing, who assume they will be working with LSST, but we want to make sure that we're telling them the right thing and if they will be able to and how to apply. So I'm just advocating to write all this down.
It's an excellent point, and we will take a look and make sure we can clarify it, and then we can run it by the users committee, and they can tell us if we got it right.
Oh, sounds great. Melissa?
There's one comment from the Blue Jeans from a SAC member who just wanted me to say and remind that this issue of who is the user and how do we support them is also very important to the SAC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. Yes, Colin.
Just wanted to also add that citizen scientists are sometimes included in publications as authors, and I'm several that are working for us that have ORCID IDs and are a member of professional astronomer organizations as well, like the Friends of the Royal Astronomical Society.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
I guess this was already covered, but I would like to stress, at least in the community in Chile, and I guess also in the US, maybe not only covering research in astronomy, but also in machine learning or computer science. I think the time series domain in general, as Rubin, we can contribute a lot for methods and algorithms, and especially students in those areas in machine learning, computer science, to also improve the user experience for them.
I mean, just a comment from me. I think it's great that we actually have this kind of concern, like that we have so many people that are interested. We have to think about how we're going to use our resources. That's a good problem to have. Matt.
Just to verify, so the people who don't make the cut to get access to the full data, there will be a subset made available to them at some point that they can look at? Yeah, it sounded like what we were discussing earlier, is that there will be something they can look at that's real data. Is that what we meant?
No, I don't think that's exactly what we're thinking of right now. What I meant to say was there would be opportunities for anyone in the public sphere to join a citizen science project, which would include some small amounts of data, but it's not like not like as a project we're going to say, oh, here's a chunk of data that anyone can access. It would be connected to a research astronomer who had a citizen science program where they curated a set of data themselves with their access to the data set, and then brought it over to the citizen science area so that people could use it in their citizen science program. So in a sense, they would be looking at some real data, but it depends on what the citizen science programs are.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing. In the Rubin data policy also, there is an allowance for data rights holders to share derived data products with non-data rights holders, and that's things like target lists, like up to 1,000 targets, I think is also in the data policy. So that's another avenue for amateurs and people without data rights holders to work with the data rights holders on science and using like small subsets of the data is that way as well. You can leave it on too once it's on. Yeah.
So there will be public data releases at various points?
No, what I said was different. It's if you are a data rights holder and you're working on a project and you're working with non-data rights holders, for example, amateurs who are doing follow-up, you can share with them. It's in the data rights policy, but something like up to 1,000 targets, like the coordinates. And you can say, okay, you can go and get your data for this kind of stuff and then contribute it to a program, and that's how you would write a paper together. So there's allowances sort of built into the data rights policy to enable that kind of science to happen.
Just to clarify, you say when there's a limit to up to 1,000 points to share with Others, you mean that's folks outside of the United States and Chile?
That's just non-data rights holders.
Anybody
Anybody.
in the world.
But if, if there's a network of astronomers within the U.S., then there are no limits as to the number of.
Oh yeah, if they're all data rights holders, go do your thing. Doesn't matter.
Excellent. It's a network of amateur astronomers who are doing follow-up.
So that's an interesting question that we've never done, but I could imagine that as apart from the resource issue, if there were some professional astronomer that wanted to share data with amateurs in the U.S., that's an interesting use case that we should flesh out a little bit.
That comes back to citizen science.
This telescope and everything connected to it is paid for by people in the U.S. And so it would almost be difficult to come up with a reasoning why we wouldn't allow that kind of use. I wanted to go back to Matthew's question about public data releases. So after 2 years from the date of a data release, all the data that was in that data release will be publicly shareable. But we do not yet have the resources in our plan to serve all that data publicly to anyone in the world. So we are working with one of our in-kind contributors to do just that, at least to share catalogs and co-added images that are of the publicly shareable kind to make them available generally. So there will be some public data access, we think, after the proprietary period. It's a Canadian group that's based at the CADC.
Okay.
And Michael wants to add something.
So the one data stream that is immediately public to everyone is the alerts.
Yes, thank you.
And so that's an important bit, and it relates to some of this. The brokers are seen as one avenue for that. How do the brokers fit into our scope?
Yeah, I kind of consider the brokers users.
I think my point was there'd be many users whose interaction with the system, particularly in the first year, is actually through the brokers.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not exactly asking a formal question for the project to say, right, because the project doesn't run the brokers. I'm sort of asking more of a practical, like, it seems like there is scope to say some reasonable thing or to make some suggestions or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think we would sort of think of it as the users are consumers of the LSST produced data products.
Uh-huh.
A broker consumes the alert stream. They are like a user. Then they turn around and deliver their derived data products to more users. I think the LSST users committee, I think you don't have to expand your scope to all of the worldwide broker users and everything the brokers are doing. I think that's beyond the scope of that.
I hear you, and that's my formal interpretation of the charge as well, but I think that's the most visible user interaction in the first year of the survey.
You're saying the most?
Most users, most data, because there won't be a data release.
I'm not sure because alerts it won't be a full stream in the first year. So I think really it's the data previews and our static. I think that'll be the first.
Your point, sorry, your counterpoint to what I was saying is like, look, there'll be a data preview based on the commissioning data. It's got lots of great stuff in it. That's a big chunk of science. It's not just the alerts coming out. Fair enough.
Personally, I think in terms of feasibility, if we interact with the people who are running the brokers, they're having issues that they can't resolve on their own.
Sure.
Rather than, we could get inundated with things from broker users, and we're probably not the right people to answer those questions. I think we're saying the same thing.
It's true, but we already have in our notes some thoughts that are basically beyond the scope as just narrowly defined.
Yeah.
I think this is a really good question, and it might deserve some more thinking about it. I think we certainly have a real relationship as the operations group with the brokers. We will end up having at least a written agreement with each of them about what our expectations are on each side. And I think this is an interesting point about, if we got to a situation where users generally were unhappy or had some issues or concerns about something that they felt they weren't getting out of the brokers that they should be, I think that is something we would want to look at. So just maybe needs a little bit more thought about how to connect in that angle.
You would want the user committee to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. That's
Well, I'm saying if we had a whole bunch of users that were really unhappy with a broker or all the brokers for some reason, we would want to work. We would want to know about that, and we would want to work with the brokers to make them more happy.
Good point. Good point. Oh, so, yeah.
I would agree that now is like beyond the scope of our interaction with the users, but I'm not sure if it will always be, and especially because the brokers guiding the objects that you want to check could be a window to go to the rural users platform, the science platform, sorry. And then it would be, I think not now, but at some point would be useful to start thinking in a way from connecting the brokers from the users, from the science platform, in the sense that you won't be able to download all the objects that you want from the platform. So that could guide your use of the platform itself. And the closest example that we could find, and based on the question that we have received as a broker, is like how to connect with all of them at once so that you can guide your science case. For instance, we are very used to catalogs, but not necessarily to alerts. So we can think, for instance, the AstroQuery feature in AstroBite, where you can access several databases, even without imposing constraints for what are the products that they have to offer. Is like a starting point to connect and guide your science cases. So I agree that it's not something that we could start thinking now or making any policy, but something that could guide decisions in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Alessandra. That's really good. Another obvious case would be that our user community generally says, "Hey, we're not getting X out of any of the brokers," and so what do we do about that? So we would want to know about that so we could go back and work to make it happen.
Any other comments on this particular topic?
Well, there's one comment from the Slack channel about these questions and whether the users committee should be thinking about how it would be best to communicate the data rights policy to users, like with a website or something. Because right now there's a long PDF and it has examples and it's very useful, but it's also very long. And so actually I think in the future this is actually more of a community engagement team endeavor. I think it's not actually the responsibility of the users committee to communicate anything about Rubin. That would be community engagement team in the future. Yes, there will be a website that explains it. And also once the actual authentication and authorization, like the formal ones that will be used in the future, once those are like chosen and in place, then we start explaining it to people how to get accounts and stuff. But for now, we don't quite need that because we're still just at the IDF. We're still doing all the authentication by hand. So, yeah, so just that one Slack question I'll raise and answer and hand it back.
I'll just comment that the SAC can be useful in this regard if the project or the community engagement team would like to help the SAC in that.
I'll just comment that the brokers themselves are very acutely aware of community engagement, and as part of this elastic effort, we're going to be inviting all of them to present to all of the SCs and the members of the SCs how to use the brokers one by one so that you really get a sense for how you can plug in and use the challenge data itself as a test sample to sort of get up and running. And since this is envisioned as an ongoing process, even if you aren't ready in the next few months, the data will be there. You press a button and replay it. And you have time to get developed and set up and give people feedback on what you want changed.
And do you have any personal opinion about how brokers should, or the UC should interact with brokers?
I think it would be really helpful to have the UC run some kind of survey that's standardized and get responses from the committee, from the users, and then pass that feedback on. I think that would actually be quite helpful.
That's a good suggestion. I like that. So we had some homework as a committee to in advance to sort of go through a number of the notebooks to sort of exercise them and get some get our own thoughts rolling. So I think we're going to shift to that unless there are other topics that are that we really need to cover. So I'm not sure exactly how we're going to run this. I mean, we can either I can solicit comments from the committee. Would that be okay? Why don't we go ahead and do with that? So did the committee members, I don't mean to put you on the spot, I assume everybody had a chance to look at least at one or two of these things.
I think there's 4 slides for the 4 different things the users committee could choose from. So it's like the TAP, the Butler. You just flip through the next 4 slides, you'll see, and you could start anywhere really.
Yeah. Does anybody have a preference where we start on these? I know Igor, you just push hard.
And then you can leave it on.
You have to let go for it to reach. Yeah. Speaking of user,
I think a good place to start is that from the conversations we had, everyone agrees that especially the tutorials, the notebooks in particular are really, really good. So we agreed to start by commending Leanne, that I see is the author of much of this work, and everyone else who put effort, because it's a really high quality product. So thank you on behalf of the committee and the user for this work, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you. Again, anybody have a preference as to where we jump in? Why don't we just go to the TAP service catalogs? People dive into that, see any issues. I think, were there any concerns about finding the information? I think if you go from the landing page, you could get portals and notebooks. That seems pretty good.
Yeah, I can probably continue then on this end. Should I talk here or on the microphone? What's better?
Why don't you go to the computer? And let you need your laptop.
Would be good to read my notes.
Okay,
I'll stay here maybe.
Why don't you just stay there?
So that I don't have to shout. I don't have a very powerful voice, sorry. So, well, first of all, everything was pretty easy to navigate, especially since everything is so good and so important, we can make it even easier to find. For example, when you are on the science portal, I couldn't find any link to the tutorials. So to find link to the tutorials, I had to go to the data preview page. So just a small note, maybe pointing at the tutorials from multiple places can help new users. In general, I was personally very happy to see how the TAP services and the examples were pretty sophisticated, also in terms of visualization. So I think that having this example out there specifically for Rubin will also encourage the community to make very high quality plots that in the end can deliver the science really well. If I can make an extremely small comment, is that I think the default time that was indicated in the cells of the notebooks for the queries to happen is always between 2 and 10 seconds. But often the query took about 2 minutes to run. So I don't know if this is because there are more data available now. So the indication should scale. And in my case, I'm very impatient. So I restarted the kernel twice because I thought there was something wrong. Probably just the data are increasing. So maybe this little change can make impatient user be chilled and know everything is okay and their data will arrive soon. And finally, I have just a couple of a bit more general comments. One is about data preview in general. I receive pretty often questions about alerts. and people realize that there is no way at the moment within data preview to play with alerts directly. Then, of course, the answer can be when you have then alerts, you can get a light curve, we can go in a table as I was talking with Melissa, and then back we are exactly at the same point. And also there are other ways to get alerts. Can be ZTF, can be the brokers, can be the Elastic Challenge and whatnot. However, perhaps having some alerts as official product in the data preview could probably help people if they have at least something to look at so they can know what the alerts will include, at least what we think they will include at this stage. And finally, talking again about visualization, definitely there was a lot of effort put in very good interactive visualization in the notebooks as well as in the portal. So something I'm thinking is that perhaps when we will have thousands of people using these services, it won't be uncommon that people create very nice plots from the portal and then perhaps want to export them and use them in papers. So I think, again, the quality already now is really good, but if the Rubin, the project, is happy with people using these plots directly from the portal and have them in papers to maybe even state it, this output will, is it okay to use it in that context, and also be open to feedback to make sure that the quality will be paper ready. And if that's not the case, maybe just write it down. Like we invite you to download the data, make your own plot. So I think in this way we can ensure really the highest level of quality of any publication that comes out of Rubin. And this is my small personal findings after browsing a bit on the services. Thank you very much again for whoever put this together.
Thanks for those comments. This is Gregory Dubois-Felsman. I'm the product owner for the Science Platform, and it's really great to get concrete feedback like this. You know, obviously this is data preview 0. We have a long way to go, but your feedback will really help us prioritize where we polish in the next couple of years. Thanks very much.
Do we have other UC members who have some direct comments about any of the notebooks?
Hi, this is Alessandra. Maybe just a question. So I wanted to reiterate what Igor said about commending the effort. I wanted especially to highlight the fact that for people at smaller institutions that never owned a telescope and Hispanic serving, like where I come from, the effort you're put in this notebook and in presenting it that way is huge for us in terms of impact in involving students. So I wanted to say that again. And so with that though, because I like the notebook aspect so much, then I wanted to explicitly ask how much of what we see now will remain, at least in most of its components, once we get into DP1, DP2, and the actual data release. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, if Gregory is here, Gregory, I can let you answer that.
Yeah, I can certainly try to give an answer to that. I mean, this is a one-way road. I mean, we are certainly not planning to take anything away. The intent is to have increasingly sophisticated capabilities in all three aspects. I think that will be more noticeable in some ways in the portal and in the data services, because we're going to be like adding kind of specific identifiable features. In the notebook aspect, we've been focusing on performance and scalability. And then in the future, we'll also be working on ways to make it easier to analyze data in bulk in the notebook. So to make these more computational resources. But certainly all the capabilities you've seen will be there. None of that is going to go away. And just to be clear, maybe that just so that the committee knows this, I mean, we use the Science Platform internally as well for commissioning activities and so on. So we're always exposing ourselves to its good features and its flaws.
Okay, I wanted to follow a little on Igor's comments about the platform. I checked in particular the difference image analysis notebooks, and I found they're very easy to follow, and also the images were very at some point necessary to understand it and give a clear idea of that. But I could also note some bias when one is used to, for instance, the Suki Transient facility data or the alerts contents and information that could also enhance the experience in the sense, but also recognize that could not only be always be the case for the users. So I also wanted to follow in the line of adding more, maybe another tutorial or more basic information about the alerts for the users, based from, for instance, from the table, so that the user can see, for instance, how is each alert connected to the other one, maybe what search radius was used, so that for users that are not too keen to the alert information from other surveys can have a better insight on that from the notebooks and tutorials.
I think I'm not totally clear because I think you're asking for maybe a new notebook or new tutorial to be developed, and I didn't quite gather the contents that you were asking for.
Yeah, I'm thinking that mostly on a very basic notebook, maybe focuses only in the alert content. Even when the platform won't use alerts for the user, I think it would be very useful to understand better the content of the tables and also what is Rubin directly receiving. I think that is useful for visualizing how your object's information will arrive from the perspective of the user. Because I found it commenting with other people that is not trivial to understand what is the content of the alert that is going to the tables that will be stored in the platform. So it's a kind of suggestion of a very basic tutorial explaining the alert content and how that goes to the tables.
Yeah, Melissa, I think we could probably build a mock-up of an alert in a notebook out of the information that's available in the tables and making cutouts of the images to represent the postage stamps. I think that's essentially the idea here, is that we could have a notebook. You start with a DIA object ID. DIA source ID, actually, and then you kind of build out all the things that would be in the alert that would have been issued. And I think we could.
I get it. I can absolutely make that for you. And all the components are kind of there. They're just they're not packaged. Now I get it. Thank you.
Right. So by the time you've executed the notebook, you have on the screen all the little bits that would have been in the alert.
Yes, that's a great idea. I'm going to make that for sure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for that interpretation, Gregory. That was very helpful. I was so stuck on there are no alerts in DP 0.2. How do ones do this? But clearly that's in the air. That's a really good idea.
And they're not in the RSP. Alerts access isn't done through the RSP, but now I get what you're asking.
Yeah, and we don't, in the future there will be an alert database that has the as issued alerts, but that does not exist now either. But all the scientific content of an alert is basically there. Not all the metrics, not all the the variability features that will be in the final version, of course, but there's a lot of it's there already and could be assembled.
This is Matt Holman. So there are a number of other things that are not available in DP0, and I'm wondering if maybe some of the we've received some comment from users that they would like to see, for example, solar system objects, and some of that might actually be addressed by similar mock-ups. If the idea was really just to make sure that people had access to formats and that kind of thing, it wouldn't necessarily have to be incredibly extensive or even realistic, but just it might address some of the concerns. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if Mario, you have a comment.
Yeah, I think the issue there is that there are no solar system objects in the existing tables. So it's not a question of simple data transformation to take something from existing tables and put them into alert format. It's just that it's not there.
Okay.
So,
There aren't solar
unfortunately,
system
that wouldn't do it.
objects in the simulation itself.
Sorry, say it again?
There aren't solar system objects in the underlying simulation at all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's correct.
That's the key issue, right? We don't, right? We could do a standalone thing off to the side to illustrate what a solar system object might look like, but they wouldn't be connected to the DP0 tables at all at that point.
Yeah, I understand.
And I'm not actually volunteering to do that because I think that's something that we'll probably.
Well, there've been other discussions about that.
Yeah. We'll do that in some other context, I think, not in DP 0.2.
So I think we're about an hour in at this point. So I'm just going to ask if we have other questions, or comments that really should be voiced to the whole community. Let's go for it. But maybe give I'm giving kind of a 10-minute alert. Maybe let me just poll the user committee. Do you think how much time do you think we need for an executive session? 20 minutes or so, or? Okay, so in 10 minutes, we're going to shift to executive session. Do we have, yep.
I just wanted to make a comment about the image access. That's really nice that you can get access to images now. I tried downloading. I feel like it's not super intuitive to try to download an image so that you can get it on your laptop and look at it in DS9. I figured out a way to do it, but I figured it's a little non-intuitive. And the other comment is, I was wondering what the limit is on space if you wanted to upload images so you could interact with them through the platform. Is there a limit on space? Those are the two. I guess one is a comment and one is a question.
I think I'm going to throw the uploads question to Gregory.
Yeah, I don't have the number, but we'll get back to you on that. I don't know exactly how much storage we have allocated for users right now on the interim data facility. But I mean, I will find that. I will find out what that is. It's a pool, so it's not an individual quota. So right, we need to be concerned about people not going wild with the resources, but certainly. I don't see that it would be problematic to have a few images. On the download question, I agree with you. We've actually been talking about how to make the user interface flow for downloading images more intuitive. That's already been something we've identified internally.
Thank you.
I guess I would just add to Matt's question and Gregory's answer. One of the things we've been trying to naturally encouraged by what we have produced on the platform is that people work with the data and visualize the data there, including looking at images. So if there's something particular that you think is much better or easier on DS9 that you're not getting out of the platform, we should talk about that too, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that. That would be really valuable feedback.
The point is that there's such a huge amount of data and such a huge amount of users that at some point, we're not going to be able to support just unlimited downloads by people, right? There's going to be a resource limit. At some point, we would have to pay for downloads from the cloud. We're not near that now, but at some point that could be an issue if everybody just wanted to download huge amounts of data.
Right. I think the use case I was thinking about was trying to match to another image. In my case, it was a simulated image, but I could imagine in the future if you had like a DES image or something that you want to try to match
exactly
between, that's the use case I would be thinking.
One of the use cases that's not necessarily the direct responsibility of the Rubin team because they're concentrating on the Rubin data, but is something we're talking about with our international contributors and with Noir Lab are how to bring the other data sets close to the data so that kind of thing can be done naturally close together and you don't have to do all this uploading and downloading. So that's coming, but it's not available yet.
Yeah, so let me add something there as well. You certainly can, you can upload images directly into the portal for display, and it has a lot of the features that you would find familiar to lock two images to each other so that you can pan and zoom them in coordination, blink between them, and so on. So some of those things that you might have been thinking about doing with DS9, you could certainly do internal to the Science platform by uploading the external image. And we also already have access to other IVUA compatible OBSTAP services. You can get images from MAST in the Science platform. You can get images from CADC in the Science platform already now. And those capabilities will continue to be there. That's it's one of our requirements to make community IVUA compatible data sources available to be used internally to the Science platform as comparisons and so on. I mean, it's a little difficult with DP 0.2 because it's a simulated data set, so we don't have matching images on the outside, to compare to. But we could still have a tutorial where we walk through how that would work. Even though, the masked image of a place in that field isn't going to look like the simulated sky, but we could still show you what it would look like to pull up an image from outside and display it next to the data.
Sort of related to this question of resource usage, I think one of the things we want to keep an eye on is, two things actually. One is people looking to do bulk analysis, so large-scale analysis, and also groups of users looking to pool their resources in order to do a bulk analysis together. I was wondering if you've seen any of that starting to appear in the current user base.
Looks like that might be a question for me. Not yet. It's been in our requirements and expectations from the beginning that people will work in groups and collaborations, and we have mechanisms for group access controls to data that are expected to be available later. That's not there now. Those sharing mechanisms are not in the DP0 level of advancement of the tools. And then the same for resource quotas. We understand that from long experience of similar systems in astronomy and other fields that it's more useful to assign quotas to groups than to individuals in many cases. So I hope in the future you'll see that we're addressing those questions, but that won't be in DP0, certainly.
There are some simulated Roman images based on DC2. The Troxel's done. Mike Troxel at Duke.
So if they're on a public site, they could be manually pulled in. If someone's put them on an actual image service, we could use that. Although I guess I'd be a little surprised if that had happened, but perhaps
no.
They
right. But anyway, it might be fun. Maybe we can ask Troxel.
Yeah, if someone's willing to put something just like on an open web server, a couple of images, we could certainly show people how to pull those in, both from the notebook and from the portal. That's a great idea.
Thanks, Gregory. Maybe I could just ask my question in a different way to Melissa. Have you seen emerging from the community? Are there any emergent power users trying to do increasingly computationally heavy things as a delegate? Do you see delegates starting to band together, wanting to do heavy-duty things?
Band together, no, not yet. But we expect that to come in the future. Power users, sort of, a couple of quite keen ones who went straight past us, and started with our tutorials, and then they've found issues that we've missed so far. So there are definitely people who are helping us a lot and taking it to the next level, but not quite in terms of compute. No, not yet.
Do you have any final comments or questions? I think If not, this is probably a good time to transition to a closed session. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I think this is really, really productive. Again, I want to thank the people who put all of this together. It's really fantastic. So just to remind you, contact us in various means if you have comments or questions.
Thanks, Matt.
The team really appreciates the time that you're putting into to helping us make this the best system we can. Thank you so much.
We're happy to help.
So I think at this point we should ask people who are not members of the committee to log off from BlueJean, right?
Yep, I was just about to. I was just typing that. Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Just watching to make sure.
See you all. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. I'll be right back. Greg, by this time, you haven't learned that, like, if you have a good idea, Melissa has already read your mind. I don't know how she prevents reading all the bad ideas.
Oh, we're just on the same wavelength. Fred Klitsch, please log off BlueJeans. John Carlos Mora, please log off BlueJeans. Everybody who's not a UC member, we need you to log off. Phil? No. Oh, it still shows you as well. Did you just close your laptop or did you actually log out?
I thought I logged out, but I will.
It's okay. You don't have to check. I mean, you're clearly not eavesdropping. So.
Although judging by relatively positive comments, I think that we're not turning skillful.
Where did Matt go?
He said he will be back.
Oh, he just stepped out for a second? Okay. We just have 3 people still here. Just John, Jennifer, and Jovan. If I'd thought about it in advance, I would have logged in as a moderator and just removed them, but I did not, actually. Yeah, I'm just going to try and see if I can log in as a moderator. Yeah. I am leaving. I'm just trying to kick people out of the BlueJeans.
Okay.
Lisa, maybe I can ask before you leave. Do you have an estimate of the demographics of the delegates currently?
Yes, sort
I
of.
don't know if that's meant to be public at some point.
It's not really public, but I can point you guys at something later. I have a blurb for you. Oh,
I was asking, like, for instance, how many people from Chile are delegates, and I don't know. Not necessarily they will be so active users, but if you have any.
I cannot log in as a moderator, and I can't make these people leave. Sorry about that. There's going to be just a few people. I don't think they're listening because they clearly won't. Let me. BlueJeans stuff is.
Does it look like today's topics are going to be particularly hot?
I don't think so.
So, I mean,
it doesn't really matter. I mean, we could almost.
Yeah.
We didn't really need a closed session.
Yeah, Jennifer and John, please log out of your BlueJeans. You can hear me. Yes, you can get to it. Yes, they're probably not listening. Okay. I need this and this. And I won't be far, so if you end up with like technical issues, shout out the door. will be at her desk at, she's been there since 10, so it's great.
Can be 10:30 exactly. 11 or 11:30.
There's lots of shuttles. I'll be right
There's
outside.
more than one.
Yeah, there's more than one
Okay.
shuttle. Lots of shuttles. I'll be outside the door. We'll go talk to Aaron right after you're done.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I have to head to the airport within the hour, but I'm trying to get organized.
I think the arrangements have been under. So I felt like that went pretty well.
Yeah.
Did anybody have any?
I just wanted to say I feel like defining who is a user is kind of a big deal, that we need to really pin that down, because I feel like that is the potential for a lot of equity concerns, especially at smaller institutions. If we are fuzzy on what exactly a user is and people can't get access that intend to do science, I think that's something we really need to, I mean, someone already mentioned we need to write it down. Clearly, it needs to be written down, and then we can iterate on what kind of concerns could come from what has been written down. But that's the biggest issue I see at the moment. It has the potential for real consequences.
I'm writing.
Yeah. Because I have a feeling I kind of understand what Bob was saying. I sort of got a sense of what the intent is, and I don't know how to implement that intent in a way that seems welcoming.
I know I was concerned by the statement that community college professors, they'll probably be fine. That seemed very ad hoc, and ad hoc things can be risky. I definitely would want to include community college professors, but just the idea that it's like, well, that group is good, that group, it's like we need to have a clear definition. We make sure the people that are intending to do science get access. My honestly, walking in here, my impression was anyone in the U.S. could access the data.
That was the language for many years.
I did not understand that.
When
it's not exactly true.
When they wrote the data rights policy several, probably what, there's a draft 2019, 2020, and it's sort of updated. That's when it changed to say professional astronomer scientists.
And do you think that was motivated by concern of lack of resources?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob said it right. I think it's primarily scope for the science platform. And once you're restricting data, it's difficult to say that there are 330 million people with access. Sorry, plus Chile. I forget the population of Chile. And here's the non-sharing policy we're going to implement. I'm sympathetic to that. Yeah. But that doesn't change your point that I totally agree with, that how to not.
And by the way, brokers, will you have to log in to access the broker information or not? Because that makes a huge difference.
It's up to the brokers.
It's up to the brokers. Well, but not really, because if the broker make everything that they receive, so brokers are users, as Bob said. But if they make a web page, well, they put all the light curves of everything they find.
Actually, I think that's still like something to be discussed and explicitly written. For instance, if you provide the information to the public that is, for instance, based on proprietary information, can you still provide it to the community, or is there a firewall there?
For instance, the Think broker, everybody can access.
Yeah, exactly. But again, Think is a user, but apparently users are not allowed to share data. I guess depends how you define it.
So, sorry, this is answered. All of the alert information is globally public to anyone.
Okay, good.
The brokers are allowed to just share that with anyone.
Easy.
Okay.
That's what
They
I
are
was
not
hoping to hear.
allowed to just say, oh, but we have access to the last data release, we're going to do all of that. The more confusing area is they are allowed to say, we can't tell you all the parameters of the galaxy, but we can use that galaxy information from the proprietary data as part of a classification that we can then distribute. That's the part where it's a little harder to articulate. But the basic, those things streaming out, 10,000 for every image, all the alert information is public. And so thank you for making that suggestion that turned to Melissa's doing that demonstration notebook. That can be so nice and concrete let me think about alerts, because the Elastic Challenge is fun and good for the brokers, but users aren't quite, I think, going to be as much a part of that.
Yeah, and also I think especially the CTF already users are like very naturally progressing to LSD,
right, yeah.
but not necessarily the rest of the people.
Yeah.
Michael, can I ask,
Yeah.
how has Sloan dealt with this problem? How has Sloan dealt with public data access?
Sorry, I can answer that. I'm not sure if we agree on what this problem is. Sloan is specifically, you're talking about after the public data releases from Sloan, or are you talking about internally?
I feel like SDSS has served data.
Right.
There is a proprietary period, I assume, but they serve data which you can pretty much access as any person in the US.
Yep.
Or any person around the world, I guess, can access.
Right. There's Sky Server, but there is not significant compute made available. But I think to the point where you're going with this, so you could do simple, straightforward stuff, and that was just for anyone. You had to like sign up for an account, just like you have to like give an email and a password, but like just not any restrictions on that. If you wanted to do large scale queries that were going to take like an hour or something, you had to like click something. It's just in that spirit of how do you go from millions to a countable number of users. That worked pretty well. It worked fine. So maybe this is a thing we should sort of think about, like, okay, as users come online, as you have a sense of what it takes to run the RSP, and all those very conservative planning estimates turn into, no, here's actually how it works. Maybe we should revisit this question, or maybe we should start pushing now to say, if there's any problem that can be solved by $50,000 a year, and it can be 3 times as inclusive, let's just spend like,
Yeah, I would like to bring some other another questions that I am asking to myself and to you. So this morning we have seen that we had some people from the Rubin users community who have tried this notebook and gave some feedback. So I think this is very nice and certainly very useful at this point of the Rubin users committee. But I am not completely sure that it is totally our role. So what I would like to understand is how we are going to be able to collect the user input in the future. Because, for instance, the RSP, there are the delegates, and there are the users. So there are the users, there are some delegates assembly, which are certainly very useful with a lot of feedback. How do we make the link between this users assembly, the users community, and the Rubin user committee? It's totally unclear for me at the moment. So it may very well be that this committee may be biased in some sense that there can be some not totally representative of the standard users. So it can very well happen that we have some feeling about the service provided, which are not corresponding to the actual user's feeling. I don't think this is the case, but I mean it could happen. So how do we organize ourselves in order to get the user's feedback?
I think that maybe we are still like not sure even what kind of question we receive. So maybe as a starting point, we can just like start in raising, for instance, if one of us receives a question, share it with the other, share it with Melissa, and so that's guiding, okay, this is not our competence, this is maybe for the developers of the platform, and I don't know, I'm just like trying to throw ideas of how to react when we start receiving actually the big questions.
I mean, so that's like, I don't know if everybody got the email that I forwarded. I mean, so that was, you know, well, there was a case, for example, I saw somebody asking a question in a session, and I approached her afterward and had a discussion, and I asked her if she could write down, you know, a paragraph or so just to summarize, and then she did that, and I, sent it to the group. So is that sort of, I mean, that's another idea of like.
That's an idea, yeah. And just Paul, how many people here are attending the users delegates assembly meeting?
I have only attended one of those.
I've been to one.
I've been to a few.
Okay, so it means that at least some people are attending these meetings. So.
I haven't attended, but I received like these notifications from the forum when they gave the summaries and big questions that appear. So I tried to follow in that way.
Right.
One question I had is, are we supposed to sit and wait for questions? Are we supposed to be somehow going out to try to ask people at colleges, like, are you interested in Ruben? What is your sense of our responsibility?
I think that's more of a CET thing to engage the community, but I think that in terms of, we don't need to wait for questions. Like, I think, for example, when I saw somebody asking a question or making a comment, I thought, okay, that seems relevant to the user committee. So I sort of think early on, we can approach people, like, I think we don't have to wait. We can be active. Partly we get involved and we see issues ourselves, but if we, hear people having issues one way or another, we can, I think go talk to them and try to solicit some feedback.
Okay.
This is Ashley. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I really appreciate this question. I wonder if it's worthwhile to have a joint meeting with the engagement team, because I am also curious, like, what the boundaries are, and if there's a way we could more clearly be working together.
I think that's a really good suggestion, and something that I think Melissa would be quite open to facilitating. I think that's a really good idea.
One specific concrete was, in our discussion of what should next year's meeting look like, what should our role at next year's meeting look like?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was good that someone said something about the plenary the first day, but basically I don't think we are deeply visible as a users committee.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so I think whatever happens next year, I think we should be. I think we should be more, particularly because the in-person, and I think one of the advantages of the committee can be, I just want to chat about something. I'm not trying to ask project for some formal answer or some formal thing or to get some prepared response. I kind of want still more someone to be like, oh yeah, okay, well we can.
I mean, maybe in advance of the meeting, not too far in advance of a meeting, we send out some kind of alert is sent out that basically says, members of the user committee will be there. This is an opportunity. If you haven't, there are various channels to input your concerns and questions and feedback, but if you want to talk to somebody in person, they're going to be there at the meeting.
They will be identified by funny hats. Or...
Yeah, exactly. But something that says, gather your thoughts in advance, so that some people really respond to that. They'll come up with 3 questions and say, these are my.
I think one of the simplest ways to handle that would be to mark on your badge somehow, to have a sticker like UC. That's easy.
Yeah, that's right.
We need bigger badges.
What?
We need bigger badges for all the stickers.
Yeah,
exactly.
I like the AAS. They are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not entirely joking.
Maybe
I think
the
badges should be a little bigger.
Eventually,
I already reported.
Okay, yeah.
We're going to want a shield, just a giant,
Yeah. but I think to Dominic's question, a bit like just getting survey responses in person or online. It doesn't have to be exactly the questions you're asking for, and it doesn't have to be exactly your scope.
Yeah.
Sincere, authentic feedback is fantastic.
But I've heard, besides the technical feedback that I myself provided, which sounded like a little bit something I wanted to hear. Sorry if that was too long.
Oh, it's great.
But I think a couple of items that came out today are exactly the scope. Users committee, who are the users, has to be well defined, and also the one that then was written that Matthew circulated via email. I think that's perfect because it's a request for having a place where all the tools that are designed for a certain task would be present and people can easily find. So that's the sort of question that the individual user, actually I think this person already asked the question in a session yesterday, and can put it out there. But it's not the same as having a committee that actually says, okay, we value this, and as a official organism, we can then make sure, or at least push as much as possible for it to happen, and then touch base maybe at the next meeting. I think that's kind of the perfect balance among the practical examples that I've seen these days, and definitely making ourselves visible, which also can mean just at the appropriate time revealing to the people you're having dinner with. Yes. You know, by the way, like I heard Alessandro do that yesterday for a couple of days ago. Just tell some students, by the way, I'm part of the committee. If this is something you care about, why don't you write me, and then I can then expand the message and bring it to other people. But yeah, we have to also create these occasions.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think that maybe like the most natural part across the year, not only in these meetings, is like to be approachable, because in the end, if you want the information, you can go to the forum, to the several documents, but it's easier to find like a local human that is related to this. Okay, I have this question. Can you help me find out? And like make it more closer to the people.
And I think just like, when I teach a class, the students learn better from each other than from me. I'm not confused about that. I think we can help some of that too, and say like, oh yeah, I just went through that tutorial. That was a little confusing. I totally hear what you're saying. Here's kind of how I figured that out. And the more expert the person, the harder it is for them to explain, unless it's like the 20th time they've done that. So I don't know. I could imagine. I'm not sure we should do this, but we could have a few people each year just try to read the documentation. Right? I know it too well. And I don't know very well at all, but it's already too well to like address this discoverability question, which is always so hard. And again, I don't know if that's CET or us, but I feel like we have a good relationship, mostly because Melissa is fantastic. And maybe that'd be a thing.
So it's 10:30. So at in the meeting minutes toward the end, there's a little. I wrote a closed session and a couple of thoughts, but if you feel free to add to the minutes if you have, because I wasn't doing it as we went along.
One last thing I wanted to say is I feel like we need more dedicated communication channels, like an email address that says Ruben Users Committee. I don't think that exists.
I think we, rather than the one that I forwarded to, you want something separate from that, right?
There is one?
It does exist, it just doesn't go to us.
To this morning, I forwarded the thing from Alex to Ruben Obs-users.
There we go, yeah.
So the public can email to that?
The public can email to that.
Okay, all right.
And I don't know if, I think it goes, I'm not sure who it all goes to. It's us and probably Melissa and a couple of others.
Okay, great.
When we started in the committee, they added us to that, and we can send emails to that list.
Okay. So does that, what works best for people? Email works great for me, but I know Slack works better.
Slack is quite useful.
Slack.
I don't know, maybe we could add like UC member in our description in the Slack, the LSSTC.
Yeah.
Maybe that can.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks everybody for being here.
That's great.
We go grab some coffee.
Meet you all, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
That'd be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.